Just the facts, ma'am.
And welcome to our third segment today for Saving America. And my special guest today is Hiett Ives, one of the great American marketers and also a super person and one of the most interesting people you'd ever care to meet. And I'm very happy to call him my friend. And we've invited Hiett to come talk with us for a few minutes this afternoon in our Just the Facts segment to talk a little bit about context in inaugural speeches. Hiett, it's your floor.
Well, that was worth every bit of the 10 cents I paid you for that introduction. Thank you, Dave. We're looking at George Washington, his inaugural address, and Joe Biden in his inaugural address. You had, Dave, responded to a deal that I had, words used by Washington, and very high caliber and positive words, and just one of the deals in here, he talked about the propitious smiles of heaven can never be expected on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of order and right which heaven itself has ordained. Now, you contrast that against Biden, who said, we come together as one nation, democracy has prevailed. We have much to repair, much to restore, much to build, much to heal, and much to gain. But we cannot do it while divided against ourselves. My whole soul is in this, bringing America together. So the tone is so much different, and the approach is so much different that I just wanted to sort of put that on the table.
Well, it's fascinating to me because Biden's presentation sounds a great deal more like Lincoln's second inaugural address, where he talks about a nation divided. And it's interesting because he then spent the next 2 weeks trying to undo everything that Trump did. And as I said in my opening segment today, Trump did a lot of good stuff, and it seems to have been washed over. And the speech seems to lack a certain eloquence, which Washington clearly portrayed in the way he presented things. And remember, Washington was a career military man. He wasn't an English professor.
Absolutely. He was in the Dwight Eisenhower mold, if you will.
Well, but he also used some beautiful language in terms of addressing America. And I wondered if you want to talk a little bit about some of the other terms that he used that were in your essay. I think you backed into it a minute ago, but what triggered my thought about this presentation was that you had sent out an email about a week ago indicating some of the terms that Washington used in his first inaugural address, and I thought it really caught my attention.
Yeah, and there were words that are some would call them 25-cent words, but actually, they were very meaningful words, and I'm desperately looking for the page where they are all listed here. And come on, Hiett, here we go. The inimitable, the transcendent, discernment, beyond the ordinary limits, the magnanimous, the high-minded or noble, as in Washington felt that a magnanimous government would help America prosper. So there are words like that you don't hear in current use, but they're all very appropriate to what needs to be done.
Well, it's interesting because I didn't hear that kind of high-mindedness in Biden's address, and it's interesting because there are a substantial number of Americans who feel that we were prior to COVID on a pretty good track with record low unemployment and a pretty optimistic look. The stock market, to my surprise, is still cruising along at 30,000. And I remember when the stock market was at 1,500.
Yeah, yeah.
So 5%.
Yeah, I like you. I'm amazed that the stock market is as high as it is. I think as the residual fallout of from all of these executive orders, it's one thing to, with the stroke of a pen, eliminate 8,000 union jobs, but I was listening to the governor of one of the western states this morning that in Wyoming, that almost 50% of their land is federal land, and now there will be no drilling on federal land, and all of a sudden the income that came from that to the state is not going to be there. Along with, and of course he's a Republican governor, but there are several Democratic states like Louisiana that are going to have the same situation. So it will be interesting to see over time how the market treats this.
Well, and I think the key element on this is also going to be the 2022 election, because some of these folks, Joe Manchin comes to mind, the Democrat senator from West Virginia, whose state is definitely trending conservative, a relatively poor state despite the fact that it trends conservative, and the mining jobs there, and it reflects a substantial sense of insensitivity. Like I said, I think Biden's inauguration address was very insensitive, and certainly, even if he uses the word unify, it certainly wasn't magnanimous in any regard, in any way that term could be interpreted. And I think it's unfortunate, because it's one thing to get elected, it's another thing to govern well. And with the challenges to energy independence, the unemployment rate, the overseas respect that the United States has, and a lot of people have made a lot of the fact that Trump had a lot of detractors in international diplomacy. And my response to that might be a little different than some other people. When you tell people, cover your own expenses, pay your bills, pay your dues to NATO and the United Nations, and stop cheating America. Your countries are doing fine. Stop cheating American trade deals. I'm sitting here as your very basic business person, I'm a business professor, saying I could understand that they're not going to be Donald Trump's biggest cheerleaders, but I liked those positions. I may not have been a huge Donald Trump fan, but I supported those concepts, and that's our allies. And then the flip side of it is our enemies, who shouldn't be our enemies. I mean, there's no reason for China to be our enemies. I have co-authors in China, and I think one of the reasons that things can run like they do in China is because the average Chinese person is not political. America, where a lot of us are political, over there, they've become brain dead, deadened to the whole political scene, and it kind of runs at its own level at a very different position. So the CCP may be against the United States because they don't like the United States not kowtowing to them up to now. And I think it's interesting, in the first 2 weeks since Biden's been in office, Iran has told us they are dictating terms before they will meet us for peace talks. China has told us they will dictate terms before they'll meet us for peace talks, to which I say, I don't think so. And I sure hope Joe Biden will grow a spine and push back a little bit.
Yeah, we'd like to think that, of course, his son being on Chinese boards and Russian boards might have a influence on that. And relative to NATO, they may decry that he told them to do what they were supposed to be doing, but you know what? Now they're paying their fair share, and NATO is more powerful and more effective as a result. So it becomes a win-win-win situation. Excuse me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Hiett, we try and keep these things fairly short. As you know, we recorded 2 segments before we recorded your segment. So I'm going to thank you very much for being here today. It is an absolute pleasure to have your inputs today. And this again is Saving America for the second week of February 2021. And we thank you. This is Dr. David D. Schein, and join us again in the future.